it really describes what's going on in my brain right now. Everything is kind of loose and hard to focus. And when I was talking to one of the most awesomest person ever here, he said, "You need structure." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said,
I said, you're not sleeping. It's clear that you're not sleeping.
and
Look,
I
the
said,
first
"You're
thing that
right."
happens when people start to get weird, they just think they're having a rough day or whatever. The first thing you should always think about is this is probably a sign that I'm not sleeping well. Like if you go to put your car keys in your refrigerator or or if you can't talk, these are the things that they're seriously like we laugh because it's kind of funny, but it's how it shows up. It shows up in basically you doing stupid shit. And so
Losing my
when,
marbles.
when you do that, and it's like, we all have times where we do it one. If you keep doing it and you notice, like, that's a thing that you should go, that's an awareness flag, right? You go, is this really, I have a cognitive impairment, really? And if you haven't been drinking or doing drugs, then it's probably something a little more on the natural side, like sleep deprivation.
And
So
I like how you pinpointed this because you were like cognitive. What did you call that? You have
cognitive impairment is what it's called.
cognitive impairment, and every time I was like, shit, because I don't want my brain to stop working. Right? It's like my most important asset.
Yeah,
And
and the
good.
crazy thing is, if there's like so much research around this, and most people just don't care. Like
Yeah,
we have this cultural thing that like one of the first things that we're willing to sacrifice is sleep.
yeah.
It's just so common to be like, I'll sleep later.
The
If you, what
hustle,
do we do?
right?
If you sleep in, you're lazy. Sometimes you're lucky, right? When you
Right.
haven't been able to do it for a while, you go, oh, you're so lucky. But a lot of times, if you sleep in, people are like, oh, lazy bones. Like there's all this cultural stuff around like you should be grinding, you should be giving up your sleep for success or to like be a good mom or whatever. There's all these other things that get prioritized first, and it's just a bunch of baloney. Like sleep is the single most important factor in your health. It should be the first thing that you're not willing to give up. That's just
I
not how
like
we're
that.
sort
I
of
like that. And
cultured.
so, yeah, so guys, if you're watching us right now and you too feel like, your to-do list is overwhelming, you have so many things that you're trying to achieve, running a business, being a parent with all your kids in the house, serving clients, capturing the opportunities, all that stuff that is going on right now, and you feel like, you can't just capture it all and things are getting messy and you're not getting enough done and you're working until the wee hours of the night and you're going like I'm doing so much, but you're really not. So if you're like me right now, hop on in and this is where we're going to be talking about this.
It's also a good sign if you use phrases like the wee hours of the night.
Why, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with
That's how you
it's the
know
morning.
shit's starting to go sideways. When you're like, so I was working to the wee hours of the night. Who says that? If I like you
An
do.
Israeli whose the second language is English and she's trying to describe what happens to a hustler.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Dude, speaking of that, today, only today, I learned what a Karen is. I had no idea what a Karen is.
Oh yeah, you just caught up on the
Just
cultural
caught up
memes.
on the memes.
Karen?
I
Did
learned
someone
what a
call
Karen.
you a Karen?
What's that?
Did someone call you a Karen?
No, 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 no. I was reading a post by John
Oh,
Benson who said, "Here's my own version of Karen," and I was like. He's like, I just met a Karen today. And I was like, is that a viral video that I missed? Like, what happened? And so I learned what a Karen was, what a Chad was, what a Stacy was. There's another one, Becky. And I was like, where did this whole thing started? Like, how come nobody told me?
and in
So,
fairness, this is where again cultural stuff like there are probably more of them for women, but there are ones for guys too. There's a Chad. You don't want to be a Chad. And I think there, but again, there's definitely more for women, which isn't fair. That shouldn't be.
and, and so
Probably
there's a
not fair to those people.
website.
There's probably many nice people with those names. We shouldn't do that. That's not nice.
But that's why I was like, because there was a video of someone that was like going crazy and yelling at people, and I was like, okay, that like there were some viral videos where women were yelling, and I was like, oh, then that relates to that specific video. But I didn't know that there's a Karen and there's a hairstyle for Karen. I'm like, really? Why that hairstyle? Where did that come from? How did they pick it up? So there's a website for all you foreigners like me, which is called knowyourmemes.com. And you can go in there and it actually describes everything, where the meme came about, why they called him that way, all that stuff. So now I know that homeowner association has a Karen in it.
So here's where let's get back. We can now segue from that to back to our sleep thing. Robert just wrote, I think I learned that early last year. Perhaps I was just well shielded from that in Toronto, and that I stopped watching TV in 2011. Yes, you want to get better sleep? Stop watching TV in your bedroom. It's one of the first things you can do that will make a huge difference. And again, there are people who, when I say that, they're going to go, no, I can't sleep without my TV running. Yeah, that's part of why you have a problem. Like, stop. The bedroom is for two things: sleep and sex. That's it. It's not for watching TV. Like, let that be your rest area and your recreational area, right? But
I like how you do that.
What happens is the TV emits a specific wavelength of blue light that fools your brain into thinking it needs to keep you awake. Right? Your sleepiness and your awakeness are regulated by chemical release in the brain, right? Melatonin, and right. So the TV, there's this little tiny part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it perceives light even with your eyelids closed, right? It perceives light, and that's part of your natural biological clock, so that when the sun comes up in the morning and the room gets lighter and lighter, that part of your brain gets activated and starts releasing wake up hormones. And so likewise, when the sun goes down and you're getting darker, you want your suprachiasmatic nucleus to know that it's getting dark, and it's getting fooled when that blue wavelength is coming out of the TV. It doesn't sense the overall darkness as well. So no more TV. And likewise, that means no more tablet either. Don't be on the tablet in front of your face watching Netflix in bed right up until you go to sleep. You have to have a pre-sleep ritual, and that should include no more TV, no more device time, at least 30 minutes before you go to bed, preferably an hour before you go to bed.
That is a challenge. That is a challenge.
Seems like it now, but you'd be surprised how easy it can be once you just start doing it.
Yeah,
You know?
and so one of the things that you told me that I started applying this morning and felt much better about it is the structure of my day, right? So I have blocks in my calendar for just getting work done, but I wasn't very I didn't keep it, right? So I was like, it's book time, but then if a text message came in or an email came in or a notification or someone in my group popped on something, my attention would divert and I will respond to that. And then nothing got done, right? And so I find myself having so many meetings afterwards and not catching up with what I was supposed to get done. So let's talk about structuring your day so that you actually get stuff done.
So again, lots of different, there's not just one way to do it, but overarching stuff. I always tell my clients, get a planner. And a lot of them will say, well, I use Google Calendar or I use Outlook Calendar. I'm like, no, get a planner. There's a different processing. Like, you can still have the digital calendars. That's fine. It's important to get those pop-up notifications on your phone and be reminded of things. I get that. But there's something about organizing yourself in a planner. And what I do is I learned this back when I worked at the university. When I worked at the University of New Hampshire, I'm going to talk and do this at the same time. I had students on my staff who they were resident assistants, and they were responsible for a floor of students and advising those students. And what I did with all of my RAs was first we'd have a meeting, a supervisory meeting every week. And the very first supervisory meeting of the year, I sat down with them. I said, all right. And we'd give them markers and I'd say, you're going to color code your planner. You're going to have a color for class. You're going to have a color for work time related to this job. You're going to have a color for you time. We called it me time. You're going to have a color that you say, like, purple is me time. And I schedule me time in my planner. and it is sacred time. And it literally, like, you go, it must be sacred. You have to have time for you.
Yeah.
And so whether that's you go to a matinee and you hang out and get a little time where people aren't at you and taking your energy, or you go to the gym, right? Whatever it is, there needs to be a minimum every day of like at least an hour of me time. You can split it up into 2 half hours. You can split it up into 4 15 minutes, but there needs to be at least an hour a day that's just for you, to just decompress and do something that's enriching for you. And so these kinds of things, what we know is we live in a culture, and I was telling you this the other day, I said, one of the greatest things I ever heard was, I was listening to a speaker once who said, she said, did you ever notice that all of the statues in our culture are built to memorialize people who suffered and died?
Right. Right.
And
Right. Yeah.
like, no one gets a statue for being a really productive, efficient, high efficiency person who got things done easily and smart, right? Like our culture is
Wait, how many people do you know that got things done easily and smart? Like, how many people do you know that actually achieved something easily?
because, again, where's that getting promoted? You don't
Are you
know a
saying
lot
there
of
are
them.
people who it's like this is so sweet and easy for them, but they've never, we don't know about them because we don't celebrate that? Is that what
I
you said?
think Brendan Burchard,
That
Tony
wasn't easy,
Robbins,
but that wasn't
Elon
easy.
Musk, you know, like people. Oh gosh, I can
But
see
Paul,
her.
that wasn't
I don't want to
easy.
say it's only men. There's a lot of women that are better at it than men. It's, you know, there are these
But
people
it
that
wasn't easy for Brenda Burchard. Why do you think it was easy?
because when you go to his live events and you hear him talk about it,
Yep.
when he had a really formative event in his life. He was in a car crash.
Right.
He was on the summer between college years. He went to the Dominican Republic and he worked down there. And he and this other kid were riding in the night, and it was dark, and they were cruising along too fast. And there was one of those, like in America, it would be a road where there would be those arrow, arrow, arrow signs to tell you there's a sharp curve coming up.
Right.
But in the Dominican, they don't have those, or at least they didn't then. And so they were cruising along, and the road turned hard, and they didn't know until it was too late, and they went right off the road, and they got really hurt. But he thought he was going to die,
Right.
and he didn't. And so it was a major self-reflection point for him, where he's like, I want my life to matter. I want my life to mean something. And so those are experiences where what you get is either post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth. And we talk a lot, again, our culture focuses on the negative so much more often. We talk a lot about PTSD. We don't talk a lot about post-traumatic growth, but it does happen. Brendan was lucky enough to be one of those people who went to post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And so he started creating structures in his life. He's like, I want to get the most out of my life I can, so that if anything like this ever happens again and I look back, I don't feel like I wasted time. I wasted my life. So he got hyper focused on it. And that's why he became really good at it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that structure for a second, because it's easy to put the structure in place. But like Charlene was saying, she has that structure. She has the planner. It's harder to keep to it, right? So for example, a lot of people say, what is it, that 25-minute segment thing where you work for 25 minutes and then you take off for 10 minutes. There's a what do you call that system? There's a system for that. I can't remember what it is. You put up a timer and it runs for like 25 minutes. So you're supposed to work in like 25-minute blocks. What happens if you're, 25 minutes and you're still in the flow of things, right? And the buzzer went off and now you're like, broke my flow and I need to get up.
So you're allowed to have some flexibility and adaptability, right? If you know you're really in flow and you're cranking, it's okay to say, I'm going to keep going because I'm doing so well right now. What more often happens that we have to deal with is you're not in flow and you want the first shiny thing that comes along to be an excuse to not stay in the time slot, and you go check Facebook, or you go surf the internet or stuff like that. That's the stuff we really need to focus on more. There aren't a lot of people who are like, I keep having to get out of not and honor my flow state.
Well, that's what happens to me, right? I start working on websites and stuff, and before I know it, it's 1 a.m. And I'm like, fudge, now it's 1 a.m. Now I need to go take a shower. By the time I'm in bed, it's like 2:30, and then
right. So I think that's where we get into discernment, right? So discernment is the process of getting more specific about what's actually happening. And so One thing is, and no one can answer this but you, if I, you've got to discern, are you really in flow or are you grinding almost? Like, are you like, but I'm just cranking and I want to keep cranking, versus flow state is like, I'm so productive without effort right now. Okay, flow you want to take advantage of, but if you're really creating a habit of like, what I've really done is somehow got myself to a place where I putz around all day, and then by evening I actually am getting work done, and it feels good to actually be getting work done. So I let myself do it until 1 a.m. That's not flow. That's, you've got a shitty self-management system, and you know, you're getting to a point where you feel like good stuff is happening, but overall good stuff is not happening the way it should. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
totally. So for me, when I start working on website stuff, like hours pass by and I don't realize it. Like I enjoy it so much. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, let me just change this and let me just do that. And I want this to be perfect. And then I work on this and hours pass. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm supposed to eat, lunch. So that's my challenge with time slots, right? Like my challenge with time slots is like if I start something and it's not a short task, like building a website or like creating a video or like doing graphics or stuff like that, then 30 minutes, 2 hours later, and I'm like, oh, fudge, like,
Yeah.
um,
So compartmentalization is and discipline. Like, it's funny. Like, I, for a long time, the whole reason I got into entrepreneurship was because I realized pretty early on I didn't like other people telling me what to do.
right,
And so entrepreneurship felt so good for me because I got to decide, right? But then what comes with that level of freedom is a complete and utter lack of discipline for most people. And I
right,
was like that as well. I wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And what that meant was that a lot of times during the day, I wasn't really doing much.
mm,
So what I've learned over time is there's actually a freedom that comes from discipline. And so you have to create discipline and structures in your work environment that you rigidly adhere to, and you understand that that rigid adherence actually provides a freedom reward
right,
afterward, right? So like if you've got kids, right, as some of the folks, as some of our comments, if you've got kids, like creating a rigid structure where for an hour somebody's covering the kids so that you can guarantee you don't get interrupted by the kids, right? Whether you do cooperative child rearing or something, like there's different options, but that's what it comes down to is you've got to have some structure where you go, I know for the next hour, there's no way my kids will come in and interrupt me. And in knowing that, I've got to honor that hour and say, I will not let myself go out and check on the kids. Someone else is doing that right now. I will spend this hour completely focused. And don't take me so concretely when I say an hour. It might be 2 hours. You might have out of an 8-hour day, you might have 4 hours where, again, if you're doing cooperative stuff, you might watch your kids and someone else's kids. And then for the other 4 hours of the workday, they might watch your kids and you might, like there's different ways,
right,
but you have to create those structures so that you can say, I have this time, I will completely honor, again, that concept that I said with my students that I used to supervise, it becomes sacred. Like this time is sacred. It's only for this thing. That's how I move the needle in my life, on my business, with my partner, whatever it is. And you say, because it's sacred, I honor it completely.
yeah, I like that. Heather, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so those noises you just heard
Yeah, we didn't, but that's
are
okay.
okay, good. Are my calendar blowing up? So I have missed so many appointments. And I mean, to your point, I agree, Paul, that to the extent that you can create that structure, I think what I'm experiencing, and I've talked to so many other people, my sister who has two small children at home and is also working full time, is it's so challenging if you are. So my husband is an essential employee, has to go into his work every day. He's literally working on this coronavirus issue. So it's an important thing for him to be doing. I support him going to work. And what it means is that there's a lot of time where if he doesn't have flex time and he's not at home, I still have to get work done and be caring for my children. And that's the losing my marbles part, is that the so far the only thing that has been a successful pattern is me staying up till 1 a.m. every night trying to do work.
Yeah.
Right, which then contributes to losing more marbles. And so yeah, I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I I don't know, even in small bits of time, like we're talking like 10 minutes, be productive. Like, can I plunk my kids down, yes, in front of a video or on the trampoline where they will be okay for 10 minutes.
So Heather, you know what? This is a great, so common. So that's the first thing, is reminding yourself that you're normal in that way is really, really important, because what we see culturally is that moms are often easily self-isolated in these issues, and they somehow think, even though they hear other moms talk about it, they still end up defaulting to like, I'm the only one who really struggles with this version
How's
of it.
Everybody else holding it together, and
and everyone else is doing great, and I'm a failure, right? And you're so not. You're so normal, and but no one wants to post about that stuff on Facebook. They just want to post about the good stuff. So you're normal, and it's okay to be normal in this way. Yeah.
Totally. Well, and I think just acknowledging, like, so many people are in a pressure cooker right now. I don't have childcare coming into my home like I did. My kid's not in school, and you layer all the things on, but it is a real, like, I think we're all stretching limits, for parents especially, stretching limits about like, how do we do what we need to do in the time that we have? It's a new relationship to time, and all the skills that it takes to manage.
So I can give you a resource. The one resource is, we did an earlier interview with my good friend Jody Goodrow, who's an occupational therapist, and she has a group on Facebook called OT with Jody. And what she's trying to do, she recognizes these issues that you're faced with, because she's talking with parents all the time. She's an occupational therapist for a school district. And so what she's done is she's created this Facebook group. It's open for the public. And she keeps putting activities that are like, she knows they've got to be simple. They've got to be easy to do. She keeps putting up things like this for moms and dads like you to use. And the community that's growing there is really cool. And other parents are starting to put up things as well, where, again, the idea is, how do I create a quick and easy exercise that will engross my kids for a little bit and be developmental, right?
Instead of issue. This is the whole issue. How do I get a special needs 7-year-old and my very busy but intelligent 2-year-old to self-occupy, because they want interaction and they want mom's attention?
Yeah, go plug into that group. You will be so happy that you did. Yeah,
awesome. Definitely. Yeah, I'd be happy to check it out. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for those of you who need to see it, this is what it looks like. OT with Judy. Right here, it's a free Facebook group, and tons of really, really cool resources here. So hop on in, because parents share as well. So Paul, what we're coming up with is structure for the day, right? Like, just sacred time that you're not breaking any promises for yourself. That's what my Krav Maga instructor used to say, that when we were doing push-ups and stuff, and he goes like 10 push-ups. Usually it's kind of like, well, maybe I'll do 8, and he doesn't see. And my Krav Maga was like, you're cheating yourself. Don't cheat yourself, right? Yeah. So don't cheat yourself in those sacred times that you're putting for yourself, because you're going to be the one at the end of the night not getting better sleep and losing your cognitive functionality, like mama here.
Yeah. And the classic metaphor, Ifat, that's so great is, when you fly on a plane, what do they tell you? If the masks drop down, put your mask on yourself before you try to help someone else. Because if you try to help someone else first and you pass out because you don't have oxygen, you can't help those people, right? So put on your oxygen mask first before you try to help others. And that's a really beautiful metaphor for life. It's like, you must take care of yourself first before you can help others, or
especially
you won't be able
parents,
to do it.
Right? Like, if you're out as a parent, then your kids are left to themselves to take care of themselves, and we all know how that works.
Yeah.
So, Charlene, jump on in. How are you, lady?
Okay, wait. Am I muted?
Nope,
I'm unmuted too. I'm okay. I'm having major computer issues, so I am live streaming every day, but I'm making a mess of it. But that's okay.
That's totally fine. Totally fine.
It's totally fine. I'm loving this challenge. I have to say, if I promised myself at the beginning of the year I would do a video every day, and that was January. So I'm doing it now. So thank you for holding me accountable.
My pleasure.
But the whole scheduling thing is just, I've always had a schedule. And Heather, once you have kids, once you have kids, and my kids are older, but there's always something that comes up. And what happens is I steal time for myself, and then I feel guilty about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul, let's
and
talk
I know-
about guilt.
It's and then I feel bad that I feel guilty, and then everybody suffers. So it's and I totally agree with the importance. I actually do. I don't know if you know the app Simpleology.
No.
They do an amazing job. There's an online app. They send you, and you have a calendar, and you can actually put things in perspective. And I got my calendars late because the shipping was a problem to Israel. So of course I don't follow that either. Paul, every word you're saying is, it's spot on. And I hate to sound sexist when I say this, but you're not a mom.
But see, again, I know I'm not a mom, but that's part of the, what it comes down to are value systems. And what has to be challenged ultimately are individual value systems. And if you're running some sort of narrative or limiting belief about what it means to be a mom, if that's your primary identity marker, that's why you run into problems. That's why
but
we
it's
get
not my identity marker. I'll tell you, perfect example. I was doing something around the house, and I asked my husband to do it, and he's like, "That's not my job." And he was joking, but that
No, he wasn't.
exactly. There was a little, "That's not my job." I'm like, "Well, it's my job to do this and this and this." Okay, I could. There's certain things I give up. My house is clean 2 hours a week. I'm Sabbath observer. I have everything is neat and clean an hour before I light candles and an hour after because nobody's in the house. I have given up on things to make it work, but there's certain things that, inevitably will fall on my shoulders, and I can't schedule them in because I don't know that. So what do you do in that case?
So that's where, that's a much deeper, so again, what I'm going to hold to is the general messaging that everything is values based. Like there's an examination that's there of what's the value that is really being chosen and what's the value that's not being chosen. That's what human beings do. We have value systems that oftentimes we haven't even fully articulated to ourselves, but they run like computer software in the background, and we make our choices based on how the choice meets or doesn't meet our value system. And so when a husband jokingly says, "That's not my job," what he's really doing is communicating a value there. And then you have a choice of, do you confront that value and say, "So you're saying that it's not important?" Or do you say, "I don't want to have that conflict with my partner, so I choose to not have that conflict"? Either way, choices get made no matter what, and they're all based on values. And so
I know, but it's not necessarily my choice that's being made.
It's always your choice. You're the only person who can make choices for yourself. We can agree to disagree on that, but my model that I teach with my clients is all semantic meaning happens here. My worldview happens between my ears. No one can do it but me. And then my choices are a reflection of my worldview. And so, you're the only person that can make a choice for you.
Clearly, and I could choose not to go grocery shop.
Here's a question, right? Like when you ask yourself, and you don't have to do it right now, right, on camera and stuff, but this is a good exercise that I've done with myself in my relationships, where I'm like, right? So it's kind of like, what do I want to see myself as, right? Am I want to be the good wife? And what does that mean to me? What does good wife mean to me? Does it mean cooking a dinner for my husband, cleaning the table after him, making sure he has something other? Is that my version of a good wife? Or what's my version of a good mom? Does that mean that I drop everything and run to my son whenever he needs to? Or am I modeling to my son what it's like to be a business owner? Like, you have to have this conversation with yourself and go like, this is what my version, my own version, personal version of what it means to be a good wife, right? Or a good mom, or a good business person, or a good streamer, right? And then you live to those ideas of yourself. And then if there's a conflict between what you feel is a good wife and what your husband feels is a good wife, that's where you have to communicate, right? And be like, this is my value system. I think this is doing good, and this is, I think, what a good husband is, right? Do you think this is a good husband, or do you not think it, right? And that's where the communication come in, and you guys can kind of find the bridge between your worldview and his worldview and make it work somehow. But it's a challenge, and I think what Paul is saying is like, you can't have someone else define it for you, right? Because then you're living to someone else's expectations, right? And that's where everything starts piling up.
That's beautiful. That's the great challenge of partnership, right?
Yeah.
Is that's what it is. It's never perfect. It's hard. I get that it's hard, but thank you. If that's a beautiful way of restating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge, because sometimes what you think is, and that happened to me, and my relationship has become better when I knew what I wanted, right? So when you know for yourself, this is how I want to live my life, and then you state those boundaries, like this is what I do, and people respond to that, right? And they can respond in different ways, and then you can be like, yeah, but that's what I think is a good way to live. This is how I want to live my life, right? This is what makes me happy. That way I'm not stressed, and I'm not stressing you, and I value myself, and I give you space to value yourself. There has to be something that you know about you before you start living or deciding how you want to be. And my challenge is, when I went into my relationship, I did not know what a good wife was for myself, right? I thought that I was like, if I give him space, if I'm not there, or if I'm not bugging him, or if I'm not, that was my idea. In his mind, that was totally opposite, right? He wanted he wanted me like right there. So we never talked about that, and that created a conflict, because he was like, she's not being the wife I want, and I'm like, I'm giving him the space. So these conversations have to happen, but you need to know in your mind what are those lines of what makes a good wife in your mind, what makes a good businesswoman, what makes a good coach, a good mom. And once you know that, and that takes time, right, to figure out. It's not like, I wake up and I have a list of all my values, right? So it takes time to figure that out. But once you do, it makes everything easier, because you can say, hey, an hour, I need some me time. I need quiet. I need to read. I need, that makes me happy. Or I would love to make you dinner every night, and I would love for you to clean the table afterwards, because I put some effort into it. I would like you to say that you enjoyed my dinner, right? And not just take it and, well, thanks. Stuff like that, right? Like it makes life a little easier. And I think that what you're saying, Paul, that comes into the structure, right? Because if I need some me time, block some me time. If I need some reading time, block some reading time.
And what we so often do is, when we're faced with that moment, human beings have evolved to be fear-based first, right? Avoid pain, avoid risk, avoid loss. And so when we get to that moment where ideally we would choose the thing that honors ourselves, what we often tend to do is think of, but if I do that, if I choose a thing that honors me, what am I risking? And then that's risking the disapproval of others, or some version of that, some fear-based thing is. So if I say, no, 9 is my bedtime, so I provide myself with health and longevity, and then I risk like someone going, so you don't want to stay up with me, or someone going, so you don't really want to be an entrepreneur then, because you're not willing to grind until 2 a.m. or those kinds of judgments that we sometimes really do care about, and it's hard. It can be really hard.
Yeah. And, I don't think we learn to self-identify ever, right? Like, I don't think anyone ever goes like, okay, well, here's your, like, what are you? What do you stand for? What do you want to be like? What does success look like to you?
Look like.
What's that?
Oh, that's what coaches do. They create that structure.
But how many people have coaches, right? Like, how many people, that's not a thing that's like, okay, hey, I'm 16, let me get a coach. But we don't do that, right? We should. We don't. Right? Like, the same way we take a trainer, a personal trainer, right? We should take a coach. But we don't, because we don't glorify them. You don't see coaches in the court, right? Like as statues in the town center, like Paul was saying.
Yeah.
So, that's a challenge. So I think in order to not lose our marbles, right, if we're wrapping this up, sleep better, right? Prioritize sleep. prioritize. Last night I went to bed at 9. I didn't fall asleep until 10, but I was like, okay, I'm in bed now at 9, right? So prioritize sleep and structure your day and keep to that schedule, because if you don't keep to that schedule, then why have the schedule?
Let me offer one last thing for everybody, okay?
Okay.
If I sent you a link to my SoundCloud account where I have a free hypnosis recording that specifically is to you put it on at bedtime. So like you get ready for bed, get into bed, and then put on this recording, and it will help you clear your mind, clear the clutter of your daytime thoughts, and get you into a hypnotic state. And then when you go into hypnosis, your brainwaves shift closer to the delta waves that you predominantly have when you're sleeping. So it helps you transition. So if you're open to using hypnosis as an aid for sleep, please, by all means, hit the link that Ifat will put up for everybody and take advantage of it. You can put it on a speaker and just have it, put it on like your phone next to your bed, or if you want to start, you can do it. Some people at first, you just do it to get you ready to go to sleep, and you can put earbuds in, and that brings my voice into your head a little bit more. What tends to happen when people listen to it is they get conditioned and they fall asleep before it even gets done after they use it more and more. So then having earbuds in is a little weird sometimes, because then the cords are like, but try that as a resource.
Yeah, and we'll put that in our resources page right here on viralconnectivity.com/live. It's going to be right here. So hop on in. We have the live now that we're playing right now. And right here, you have a bunch of free resources that you can access. And we're going to add that one in there. So thanks. I'm going to follow up on this and report back to you on how putting more structure in my day helps my sleep. And tomorrow we are going to talk about bad guest, good guest.
Are we? That's going to be awesome. All right.
We're going to model this for you. What does it mean to be a good host on live, right? What does it mean to be a good guest? What does it mean to be a bad guest? So that when you are starting to join more and more live streaming like this one, you're going to know, am I being an asshole? Am I going to be asked back? Right? Or am I, being a good guest that is actually adding value?
Nice.
That is tomorrow, same time, 11, 1, 2. 11, 1, 2. See you tomorrow.